Well, hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Well, today we're talking about episode 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks, season 4, episode entitled In the Cradle of Vexilon. This is an episode where we get to visit a big mega structure, kind of along similar lines to something like, say, the Dyson Sphere, which we saw in that Relics episode of Next Generation. It's this gigantic structure made by a alien race, and it's run by a friendly AI computer that controls weather and atmosphere and all that sort of stuff. And the crew of the Cerritos this week are doing a bit of tech support, a bit of IT. The ancient computer that runs this mega structure is deteriorating and they need to do a bit of a software update, defrag the hard drive, update the firmware, where we get to see Boimler leading his very first away mission. And we get to see the other lower deckers, Rutherford and Tendi and Mariner, get jerked around a bit by senior officers that, even though they've been promoted to junior grade lieutenants, they're still getting some pretty menial task kind of duties to perform on board the ship. So we're going to go through the episode, talk about a few of the bits and pieces. We've got a lot of little in-references this week to past episodes of Next Generation, DS9, everything that is coming back into this episode in terms of a few bits and pieces. So we're going to talk about where they're from, go over all those little highlights and references from this episode. But just before we get into this week's review, you guys might notice behind me here on the back wall, this really cool galaxy projector from Galaxy Lamps. Nebulas, moving star fields and stars and everything. Got a quick sponsored message from them. Take a look at that and then we'll get right into the review. Ever wished you had access to a holodeck or stellar cartography just like on the Enterprise? Well, turn any room in your home into a planetarium with Galaxy Lamps Galaxy Projector 2.0, a futuristic device that fills any room with mesmerizing galactic vistas, where you'll be immersed in a universe of constellations, nebula and star fields. Bring the night sky indoors and explore outer space from the comfort of your home. It offers full smart app integration and allows you to take full control of the projector to change color options, adjust rotation and speed, adjust brightness, set timers and schedules, even with voice control if you choose, using actual high-resolution NASA satellite imagery to produce amazing results. The Galaxy projector is also surprisingly soothing. Pair it with some peaceful music, kick off your shoes and feel the stress of the day melt away. The projector uses low wattage lasers and produces little to no heat. It's kid and pet friendly, so it's safe for the whole family. Just in time for Christmas, such a unique gift for your friends and family, transforming even the most boring of rooms into an intergalactic extravaganza. Check out the link in the description for an additional 15% off this amazing product. Okay, so for starters, this mega structure is occupied by a race called the Coruscanians. They've kind of taken it over. It used to be inhabited by a very powerful race that built it, and then they ascended to a higher plane of existence or something, and this other race essentially kind of moved in, took it over. It's been running quite happily for thousands of years by Vexilon, who's the environmental computer that operates all of the weather and how everything operates and everything. But it's pretty old. It's thousands of years old, so it's kind of past its due date for a service upgrade, so to speak. We get Ransom and Freeman handling that side of things, the actual liaison with the leaders of the civilization, and dealing with the AI computer itself to do a bit of a patch to its software. While we get Boimler leading an away team with a bunch of ensigns, upgrade like a power terminal in another part of the planet there, which is kind of essentially like disarming a giant building-sized bomb. The devices that Boimler and his team seem to be dealing with on this planet surface do look a lot like the Warp 5 warp engine or whatever on the NX-01. It sort of looks like a whole bunch of these networked together. I wonder if that was intentional or they just sort of looked vaguely similar to Trip's Warp 5 engine on board the NX-01. Meanwhile, back on the Cerritos, we have Mariner, Tendi, Rutherford finding this new room of storage, artifacts and things that they haven't maybe previously had access to because their rank hasn't permitted it. But they've got a few little relics and iconic devices and games and so forth in there from previous Star Trek episodes. Starting with the alien probe from the Inner Light, the one that sort of zapped Picard and he lived an entire lifetime in a matter of hours or whatever. It's got this one on board. It's got that AI robot that we saw from original series, the one that looks like a hovering spark plug from the episode called The Changeling. Nothing to do with the leaders of the Dominion from DS9. They just had this very advanced computer in that episode, which we had in this in this cargo bay as well. We've got the Betazoid gift box that we saw Luaxana Troy bring on board the Enterprise back in the Next Generation episode Haven from Season 1.
And if my memory serves me correctly, the Betazoid gift box was also played by Armin Shimmerman, who later went on to play Quark in DS9.
And we also got the Waddy Chula game that we saw from Deep Space Nine. The one where all of our bridge crew get stuck in and they have to kind of work their way through a series of little puzzles and tests and so forth in order to get themselves out of the game. The Calamarain game, you know, Calamarain, count to 4 or whatever it was. It was, oh God, this one, yes, okay. I'm actually surprised it took them this long to poke fun at this game in Lower Decks. It's been a long time coming. I expected they would at some point, and they did in this episode. We get this lieutenant bossing around our lower deckers, getting them to do some menial tasks in the Isolinier chip room. Apparently there's one that's not working and they have to kind of find the broken one, which obviously is an awful task where they're going to scan everyone individually, and it's like, hang on, should we really be doing this now that we're not ensigns anymore? But it appears that they're obviously the recipients of a bit of hazing from the senior officers, although the lieutenant that gives them the task is only slightly higher ranked than they are. So essentially we ended up cutting back and forth between Freeman trying to do the software upgrade on the computer that went horribly wrong and ended up having to basically do a complete shutdown, and then the computer restarted in a bad way and was essentially trying to do a format of the whole planet by resetting it to factory settings or whatever, by basically wiping out all civilization on the planet and resetting it back to kind of a primordial level of development rather than the current state that it's all in. While we go to obviously Boimler being a bit of a control freak with his team, doesn't want to put them in harm's way. He's trying to basically do all of the tasks himself. Talin's trying to say, like, what are you doing? Like, let your team do their jobs, you know? But he just doesn't want to be responsible for the deaths of any of his team, so he's kind of being a bit of a super control freak in this scenario. Well, we have Tendi and Rutherford and Mariner up on the ship trying to do all of the scanning of all the different Isolinear chips and everything to work out which one's the bad one. The plot in this episode was okay. It wasn't anything massively riveting, like I wasn't on the edge of my seat or anything. There was some cool references with the probe from Inner Light and the Waddy game from DS9, but I found that this episode maybe didn't have quite as many laugh out loud moments as we tend to have on average in Lower Decks. I think we had multiple storylines going on simultaneously, but I sort of didn't really find myself all that invested in any of the various different storylines that were going on. I think it probably was a little bit lacking in that department. I think there was a few slightly amusing parts with the lieutenant telling the story about being trapped in the Waddy Chula game or whatever as a child and having been stuck in there a month because he wasn't smart enough to get himself out of the predicament, which turned out to be a big lie, just as a means of hazing them even more. And we had an elaborate series of pranks to try to get back at him by setting a trap in his quarters to essentially put him into the game. But then they obviously realised that they couldn't do that because of his baggage and trauma or whatever, which turned out not to be real anyway. I thought the bit when the Betazoid gift box got zapped by the Inner Light probe and just, oh, I just lived a lifetime in a day. I missed my wife, you know. I thought that was quite good. That made me chuckle. And it was surprising to see that for a moment there, Boimler didn't make it out of the job that they had to do with the power terminal upgrade and so forth, with the volcano, you know, raining down on them and everything, and him being a bit of a control freak and not necessarily allowing his team to help him too much. He ended up getting himself blown up in the process. Luckily, Dr. Ta'ana was able to revive him despite his injuries. Big suspension of disbelief here if the entire facility with those devices all exploded, which were quite sizable. There was many of them in that facility. He would have been basically blown to pieces. So I'm not quite sure how he managed to survive that predicament. But I guess, you know, Ta'ana injected him with some magic drug and he was okay. I guess much like the way that Shax got killed at the end of season 1 and then he was just okay. And we're not meant to ask too many questions. That's probably falls into the same category. Fun, of course, to see the afterlife koala there with Boimler at the end. That obviously always makes an appearance when it's to do with anything remotely revolving around sort of the afterlife or the spiritual realm or something like to that effect. That's always a cute little addition.
And the koala says something unintelligible to Boimler, but if we reverse the footage, we can clearly hear him say,
"It is not your time, Bradford Boimler."
And we find out that Ransom and our lieutenant were pranking our lower deckers all along, which was a bit mean. You'd think in Starfleet in the 24th century they'd be past such bullying practices as hazing, but anyway, all in all, it was an okay episode. I certainly thought that the first 2 episodes of the season so far were probably a little stronger than this one. Had a few cool references from past episodes that we saw there, both from original series and Next Generation and DS9 and everything. But overall, the plot just sort of, I guess, didn't have me really roped in like some of the past episodes have. So this one, it was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It was just fine. But let me know what you guys think. Leave a thought in the comments section. Did you enjoy the references to Move Along Home, the Waddy Chula game, the Inner Light Probe, the Changeling robot from original series, the Betazoid gift box? All these little cute references and so forth were good, but was the story good? Did you enjoy the story? Was that a solid, Star Trek story? Let me know your thoughts and we'll get chatting about that. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, please be sure to do so. Click on that big subscribe button to stay current and up to date all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. And be sure to check out my merch in the merch store. Cool t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, caps, stickers, you name it. Heaps of good stuff there to check out and always at very good bargain prices. Help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back if you're listening to the next video. I'll catch you guys soon.